trust and how trust was a factor in Ruth and Naomi's lives. The question that keeps coming to my mind is, have you guys ever felt hopeless or ever felt alone? I know that I have. Even though if I'm surrounded by hundreds of people, I can still feel like, Lord, what in the world are you going to do out of this? Like, I don't understand why A and B are happening in my life. I can't see C. Get it? Never mind. Thank you. Emails. It's fine. But Ruth and Naomi felt this way. Here they are. Here's Naomi. They're living in Israel. She gets married. She has 2 kids. She not only has 2 kids, she has 2 boys, which is a really big deal back in those days that you would have a boy. Still a big deal now because people like you to carry on the family name, but it was like life or death back then. Okay? So things are going pretty well for her and her husband, and then a famine hits Israel, and they move to a foreign country, and things are still going decently well because they're eating, but then her husband dies, and her 2 sons die. And she like plummets into this like, oh, crud, life was going great and now it's not good at all. Okay? That's where she's at. And so here's a couple of things we know about Ruth. First thing is that she is a Moabite, which means that she is from the land of Moab, which means that she is not a Jew. And one of the big things that God was certain about in the law of Moses was that the Jews were supposed to marry the Jews. They were not supposed to marry outside of their people. But what does Naomi's sons do? They both marry women from Moab. Okay? So Ruth is someone who is not a Jew. She's also a widow. Her husband has died. And one of the interesting things I saw as I was studying and reading for this was that Naomi and her husband and their 2 sons had lived in the land of Moab for 10 years before they died. And we don't know exactly when Ruth and her husband got married, but it alludes to the fact that they'd been married for enough time that they should have had kids by that point, but for some reason they hadn't. The Lord just had not blessed them with that. So here's Ruth. She has no husband and she's childless. And she's living in her country, but still things aren't looking too good for her. Here's Naomi, who's not only has her husband died, but her 2 sons have died, and she's living in a foreign land. She's probably had to learn their language, learn their culture, but it's not hers, and she knows it's not hers. She knows no one, and no one is there to take care of her and her daughter-in-laws. Like, she is in the pits. And she says, you know what? I've got to get back to Israel. Because there, at least, there's some hope for me. There, maybe somebody will redeem me. Maybe. Here, no one will redeem me. I will be poor. I will be destitute. I will die as a slave, essentially. But if I move back to Israel, maybe something else can happen. Okay, so she starts to step out in faith and goes, I'm just going to get back. But we find out when she gets to Israel, she sees the people that recognize her, and they're like, Naomi, it's you. And she's like, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because that means bitter. The Lord has dealt harshly with me. She was up here on top of the world, and now she's here, and she has nothing, right? So what does it look like when you have nothing? When you feel like the world's against you, how in the world are you supposed to trust anything or anyone? So my question to you guys is, what does trust mean? It's a word we use a lot, but do we really know what it means? This is interactive. You can do it.
It's like knowing someone or something will come through the way that you picture it.
Okay.
Like having faith in something.
Have faith in something. Good. 3 words that I found when I looked at the word trust was committed to, confidence, and hope. Trust means that to commit to something, to follow through with it. Trust also means to hope in something, and also means to have confidence in something. Those are some pretty cool terms. And what's really cool is to think that here's this simple word, trust. It's a big deal, and we're going to try and unpack as much as we can tonight, because I don't know if we fully know how it plays into our lives. So, who are some of the people that you guys choose to trust? Who?
My parents.
Your parents? Why do you choose to trust your parents?
Because they've been here longer than I have.
Okay. So they've got some experiences you don't. Great. They can probably help guide you along the way. That's good. Who else do you guys trust? Teachers. Why do you trust teachers? should you trust that they have the correct information?
Because they get to school for it.
Okay, so you trust the people who taught them, even though you don't know who they are? In a roundabout way you do, yeah? Okay. Who else do you guys trust? Oh, are you pointing at somebody, Gabe?
I trust Travis.
You trust Travis? Okay, why should you trust Travis?
Yeah. Well, I mean, man, he's he's a mentor to me, and he's got a lot more lessons. I mean, gosh, yeah, I mean, he's Travis.
He's Travis. What do you know about Travis that gives you reason to trust him?
I know he's very mature in his faith.
Okay.
He's been through a lot, and he knows stuff.
Okay. So how have you learned that?
Just by talking with him, having fellowship with him.
So spending time with him.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you guys this: how do you build trust with someone? We'll start with your friends, because you guys trust your friends, or you might trust a friend. How do you build trust with friends?
You start small.
Start small.
So like, hey, you should give me a cookie.
Wow, friendships built on demand. Okay, but I like where you were going with that, Claire. You start small, okay? All right. Mackenzie, how have you built trust with Kayla?
Oh my gosh.
You don't trust her?
Don't trust her.
Well, I know that Kayla trusts to get in the car with you, so why didn't Kayla trust you? How has she built that trust with you?
Wait, are you asking me now?
Either one.
Oh. Well, I trust Mackenzie because what she's like tells me is true, and I like know that if I tell her something, she's not going to.
Okay, so it's built on honesty, and it's built on confidence. That way you tell her, you feel like she'll keep confidential. Okay?
Don't always trust getting in the car with her, but
Right,
it's a little shaky.
right. But nothing bad's happened yet. Right? Who are some of the people that Naomi and Ruth had to trust? Did they have anyone to trust?
We had each other.
They had each other. Right? They had this moment where Naomi's starting to head back to Israel, and she looks at Ruth and Orpah, who's her other daughter-in-law, and she says, go back to your homes, don't follow me, I have nothing for you, like I can't, if I even do get remarried, I can't have kids, I'm too old, so like if you stay with me, you're like bound for like potential slavery, but you're really going to live poor the rest of your life. And Orpah's like, okay, I love you so much, see ya. Like, I'm still young and vital, I can go get remarried. It's fine. And Ruth is like, I don't want to do that because I believe that you have a God who has a plan because you've told me stories about him. And I think about, and I wonder if Naomi remembered this or not, but she would have known the story of Joseph, who we talked about a couple of months ago. Someone kind of recap for me the story of Joseph.
All right.
Go for it.
Well, he had dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and the dreams alluded to the fact that he might be better than his brothers,
Mm-hmm.
and so they threw him in a pit first, and then they sold him into slavery.
Yeah.
Then he became like second in command at Potiphar's house.
Uh-huh.
He got thrown in jail for something that he didn't do,
Yep.
and then he interpreted Pharaoh's dream and became second in command of Israel.
And smooth sailing. Yeah, that's great. Joseph's life was this: father's favorite, sold into slavery, second in command of Potiphar's house, thrown in jail, accused of something he did not do, became a pretty big deal in jail, and then from there became second in command of the entire world.
No big deal.
No big deal. Pretty big deal.
good.
Which one do you feel like is better? To be your dad's favorite or to be second in command of the entire world? In the world's eyes. Probably this one. A lot bigger influence than just being your father's favorite. Right? But could Joseph see that when he was down here, literally in the pit?
Nope.
Or on his way to Egypt to be in slavery? No. Slaves don't become second in command of the world. Right? But did we see that Joseph ever wavered from his trust in the Lord? He was faithful and he trusted in the Lord all the way through. And here's Naomi. Life had been pretty good. She got married, had 2 kids, moved to a different country so they could eat, and now everyone dies. And she comes back to Israel, and her trust is wavering. And Ruth says not. Ruth says, Naomi, what do you want me to do? Tell me what to do, and I'll go do it. I'm committed to you. I'm confident that things are going to work out. I don't know how, but I'm confident that they are. Just tell me what to do. And Naomi says, all right, I remember that we have a close relative. His name is Boaz. He has a field. He owns a field. It's over there. Go there. Go glean, which means like pick up all the loose wheat that they drop or that they don't pick up. Go work there in that field. Because here's how it works back then, okay? Let's say you have a square, and it's your wheat field. I don't know if you've driven through Kansas, so if you haven't, take a 2-hour drive. Go see some wheat fields. And we're just gonna pretend it's a square, okay? Here's how they would live life back then and how they would help the poor. You would harvest, if you were the owner of this land, your workers would harvest all of the land except the very outer perimeter. You would not touch that. You would let those who were struggling to provide for themselves come and gather their own food. Isn't that really cool? And so Ruth goes to Boaz's field. And so she starts to do that. And Boaz notices her because he's like, well, I don't know that person. I'm not paying her to be here. And so he asks his servants, hey, who is this woman? And they say, that's Ruth. That's Naomi's daughter-in-law. And Boaz is like, oh, yeah, light bulb. I know who that is because I've heard from around town all of the terrible things that have happened to Naomi and her family. That her husband has died, that her sons have died, that she has nothing, and she's moved back. How cool that Ruth is coming here, gathering up food for her and Naomi to eat. That's awesome. Hey, watch out for her. You know what? Even more, I'm going to go talk to Ruth, and I'm going to tell her, don't go to anybody else's field. Stay in this field, because in this field, I can protect you. Nothing bad will happen to you. I will watch over you. And he even tells his other workers, hey, drop some of the good stuff for her along the way. Let her pick it up. And she just, every day she goes out and she just trusts, takes those little steps of faith. She has no idea what's going to come of it. Her only thought is, Naomi told me to do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to trust that through this we can at least eat. And maybe something will come out of this. And what ends up happening, Boaz learns that, he could be their kinsman redeemer, but knows that there's one person who's even closer in relation to Naomi. And so he goes and approaches that guy and says, hey, if you don't want to be their redeemer, I would like to be. And the guy says, yeah, that's fine. You can have it. You can have, Naomi's old field, all of it, and marry Ruth. And so Boaz says, great, awesome. I'd love to do that. I would love to redeem something here that was broken, something here that looked like it was going to go nowhere further than slavery, essentially. Nowhere other than being essentially in the poorhouse.